Welcome to this episode on the Health and Happiness Show, where it's my mission to change your mindset so that you can live a healthy and happier life. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Let's go. Hey guys, it's Ollie here, and welcome back to another episode on the Health and Happiness Show. Today, we are joined by an incredibly special guest who is not only a friend of mine, but a mentor. He is a life enthusiast, entrepreneur, public speaker, writer, and founder of the Nourish Group, a group of world-leading platforms with the purpose of inspiring, empowering, freeing, connecting people all around the world by giving them the tools, the networks, and support that they need to personally grow in their life so that they can create a life of fulfillment, purpose, meaning, and intention. I first connected with this guest a number of years ago, who both directly and indirectly has guided me to where I am today, certainly on my own personal development. It is therefore with great pleasure and excitement to introduce you to the show, Mr. Simon Hall. Simon, how are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm blown away by that introduction. I've done a lot of interviews this year, and no one's introduced me as well as that. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. It's also been an honor to hear how we've impacted and we've helped you moving through as well. And obviously, I've been looking into your journey, and as well, it's reciprocated. I think you're a very inspiring lad with everything that you've been through, and do you know what I mean? I can't wait to see what this gives you in terms of strength and all that sort of stuff. So
everything's a journey, and the first thing, guys, when you're listening to this, stop this podcast right now. Head over to Simon's Instagram, Simon Hall BC.
That's the story.
Follow this man's work, right? Because I think when you resonate with certain people in life, stick to them like glue, right? Because they can teach you so much. And if you actually listen, like every post that Simon puts out, I'm like, this speaks to me. And it's for that reason where I really think you should stop the podcast right now, head over to this man's page and give him a follow. Where I want to kick this off, Simon, is one word that I would associate with you, and certainly in the way that I would look up to you, is connection. And I think you are a very connected person. For those that don't know, Simon's just finished a 10-day personal development mastery course. Simon is also very, very generous because he needs sleep right now. He doesn't need another podcast. He needs sleep, but yet he's given up his time generously in the jungle. He's quite literally in a jungle somewhere. I don't even know where he is. But connection would be...
I'm Ollie.
Where are you?
I don't know. I'm somewhere in Indonesia in a jungle.
Hey, I'm jealous, right? I'm jealous. But yeah, connection would be the word that I would associate. What does connection mean to you? And how can our listeners find more connection in their own life?
I absolutely love this question, Ollie, and I think it's I've never been asked this, and I actually love the answer I'm about to give. Connection for me is something that I never was. So I always had a background as an athlete. I went through my entire journey. When I look back, I did a lot of things for all of the wrong reasons, and I had a lot of connection to everything, materials. Some of them were attachments, but the one thing I was lacking connection with was myself. Now, obviously, when you hit a rock bottom moment, it usually creates rock. Let's just say rock is the best material to build great foundations, isn't it? So when you do hit that rock bottom moment, you are forced to look in. And I always say, when you're not listening to what your intuition is telling you, the universe will give you a very big slap. And for me, that happened. I got all the red flags. I got the slap, and it forced me to look inwards. And I noticed connection for me was the thing that I was lacking the most. I was trying to get it from everything else around me. I was trying to get connection through businesses, all different models. But the one place it was missing was back at home, which was with myself. So it's really great that you've asked that question, because it's one of my biggest values. I've even got it tattooed on my arm.
Oh, wow.
But like, that was it. Like, that's why connection is such a big thing for me. Both, I think you've got to connect with yourself before you can fully connect with other people and serve them. And that really is what it means to me. It's one of the biggest foundations of where I operate from and where all of our businesses today operate from.
That's pretty amazing. And to hear that, to be in such a perhaps dark and vulnerable place, hitting rock bottom, even that saying of, what was it? You can build the foundations from the rocks, or I want to write this one down.
Yeah, so rock bottom, if you think of a structure or like architecture, you build the best foundations on rock. The strongest foundations are on rock. So
That's
when you hit
amazing.
rock bottom, that's where the strongest foundations are always going to come.
Tell me, in that, when you're at rock bottom, right? Because again, most of the listeners, in fact, every probably listener listening to this podcast right now has hit a dark and vulnerable time, and they've hit a dark place. When vision is clouded and when hope is lost, how can we find connection in that vulnerable time? So when you hit rock bottom, you know, we're lost, right? How do you find any sort of sense of clarity or any sense of direction to now get you to where you are today? What was that maybe first stepping stone for you on that path?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of answers I'd like to give here. So the first one I'd like to say is like a lot of people do hit rock bottom, and it's kind of one of those places where you can go back a few times. Do you know what I mean? So I found myself there a couple of times through business collapses. I've had the whole penthouse to basement moment and all that sort of stuff. But the biggest thing that I can say from it of getting yourself away is you've always got to remember that you're in control. You've got to take 100% ownership for things. And in every single moment, you have choice as to what you do next. You can either choose to, I hate to say it, but you can choose to become the victim to it, or you can choose to put the armor back on and go out there and fight another day. And for me, the biggest thing for me was is it all started with becoming aware. What was the biggest issue? Why was I getting to those places? What was the problem? And it always came back to myself. And mate, that's the fun thing in personal development and personal growth. It's always on your shoulders. And I always say in speaking gigs, and we always get a lot of great feedback from it, is especially in businesses, it's like businesses don't fail, the person fails the businesses. Relationships don't fail, the people fail the relationships. Do you know what I mean? And unfortunately, like in all of those moments, it was always me that was the problem in them. So that's pretty much where it all stems from.
So would that be ego then, would you say? Was your ego getting in the way?
Depending on the time, the business one was the definitely ego, 100%. So that's probably the other one. The other one, I'd say it wasn't listening. It was not really following on intuition, knowing the things that I should have done, but being too scared. I was very young at the time to not do them, and that's where it came. That's what I was trying to say before. It's like everyone has the red flags of something isn't the right choice. You know, at some deep down level, you know, but usually it's the fear of taking the action or making the decision that scares the living shit out of you. And that was it in a nutshell.
I think I like that the sort of metaphor there with the red flags, because obviously coming from my health background, right, there are so many red flags that we all ignore within our own health, right? Like whether it's headache, like obviously the primary symptom before I was diagnosed was the headaches, and it's so easy to go, I'm stressed, I'm tense in the neck, right? Like, but unless we actually dive deep into what those red flags are in any area of our life, they are the alarm bells. Wake up to them in any area, whether it's health or business. Um, I'm interested to know about the business because as a young entrepreneur myself, I have a big vision, certainly for where I hope to take the Health and Happiness Academy and the number of people that I hope to inspire and impact over the course of my lifetime. What would you sort of do if you could rewind the clock, certainly in a business sense, to maybe 18 years old, young, fresh faced, still fresh faced? What would you do to sort of teach yourself again?
It really would be just listen, like just trust yourself. You're being guided, and to lean into fear. Like they're the biggest things for me. It's always been knowing the decisions that I needed to make, but not making them. Knowing the conversations I needed to have, that and not making them. And those have always been the biggest cruxes for me, both in personal life, business life. So for me, if I was able to go back to I actually started in business when I was 17. So if I could go back to him, there was a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, and a lot of hunger, but there was also a lot of insecurity. There was also a lot of fear. So the biggest lesson I'd say there is just, you know, level, and act on that. That's what I'd say.
Okay, but I've got this big wall, Simon. I've got this big wall in front of me. I just want to jump over it. I want to climb over. I want to do whatever it takes, but like I can't bring myself to do it, right? I want to lose weight and I know that joining the gym is going to be the catalyst of doing that, but I can't bring myself to do it. What would you say to someone listening to this right now who they know what they need to do to get to where they want to be, but they can't bring themselves to take that action?
This is the thing with change is you've got to look. There's plenty of variables when it comes down to change, especially weight loss. So think about this: like people won't change because it involves an identity shift. So, for example, a lot of people are very scared to give up an identity of who they are. They're afraid to upset the friends. Like, do you know what I mean? And unfortunately, that's where a lot of people get stuck because they're either too fearful to give up the identity or they don't know what the new want to be. So that's usually one issue why a lot of people struggle with the wall. The other one, again, it'll come down to fears, like what really is the problem? Is there attachments there? So this is the fun thing. Everyone's got their own individual wall and their own individual mountain to climb. What I would always say to people is don't get so wrapped up focusing on other people's mountains and walls that they have in front of them. You've got to focus on your own and really like become so aware that you understand why you do what you do. And I think when you go on that place and you become laser focused on your own path, it's it's a much easier road, but you can get over those walls a lot more quicker. Like for example, if you have worries about social circles, maybe that's the wall in front of you. Is it time that you need to go and find some inspiring social circles that pull you forwards towards your goal instead of the ones that are pushing you further away? So I always say this to people, like with questions like that, like you tell me what your wall is, like what is your individual wall, and then I'll help you get around it. But everyone's got their own wall. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? For me, my biggest wall was imposter syndrome. It really was. For me, if I look back in my career, imposter syndrome was the wall that I continually kept hitting for about 5 years, and it held me back. I wasted time there.
How did you overcome imposter syndrome?
Um, so I think the fact, I think you always get it. I think everyone, I've got a bit of a weird theory with this. I think the fact that you're getting imposter syndrome means that you're doing something. It means that you're growing, and to actually have imposter syndrome means that you are changing, you're shifting. But I think what happens is you somehow become you make the shift, the uncomfortable shift. It then becomes comfortable, and then as you decide to grow again, you get it again. So
Yeah.
I actually think imposter syndrome is the initial sign that you are on your journey of growth. If you choose to lean into it and go to battle with it and get through it, and not choose to go the other way and lean away from it. So I think you've got to go through it. And I think that's been the biggest thing. I was actually speaking to one of Bob Proctor's lead psychology coaches, Hina, about this. And she was saying, like, even at the level she's at, she still gets it. And she's like, everybody will still get it. But the fact that you're getting it is a great sign that you are on the right path and you're growing as an individual. So I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
I really
But
like that. Yeah, I really, really like that.
to that story, Ollie, what I was trying to say is that the young, naive, scared, and insecure version of me, when he got that, would hesitate, which is the worst thing you can ever do, or retreat. He never went through. He goes through. It's like armor hat goes on, the little sword comes out, shield, let's go to war.
Interesting. Yeah, like I've definitely been held back by imposter syndrome in my life, but sort of obviously 3 years ago when my life changed with cancer, that changed in a sense of like my whole philosophy is I'm not scared of failure. I think I have failed quite a few times in my life as a young 24-year-old, right? But I'm okay with that. And I'm okay with getting to 84 years old and being a failure in whatever I pursue. But very much what helps me push through any sort of doubt or fear or imposter syndrome would be the fear of regret. And I'm not scared of dying, but I'm scared of regret. And I just can't bring myself to get to the end of my days saying, I wish I had done that. I regret not doing this. So I think that personally helps me overcome imposter syndrome. But I'd be interested to hear your take on sort of regret and all of that sort of area.
Oh, yeah. I'm not scared of. I've got a fun thing. I'm not scared of death, but I'm scared of two things. Number one is yes, regret, getting to the end of my life and realizing there's cards on the table that aren't unturned, which is why I live the way I live now. I travel the world like every day. I'm somewhere new. Like that's the biggest thing for me. Is my biggest value in life is freedom and fun.
Nice.
And as soon as I kind of started to act in accordance to my values, I suddenly realized the way I was living, which was trapped, sheltered, locked, wasn't the right thing for me. So my biggest regret would be not to have given it a go and see if it would work out. And lo and behold, it did. And then, like, what was I saying with that? Then the other thing I'd look at with regret is it's what you do you know what I mean? Like regret is you're not saying yes to something. Do you know what I mean? So isn't that what so many people do? And I always look at what stops people doing that. Other people's opinions, other
Yeah.
people's judgments, imposter syndrome. So the life of regret will come through the life of fear. The life with no regret will come from the inspired way of living and saying yes to new opportunities and taking the risk, but always believing in yourself and believing that it will work out.
100%. Yeah, like I love the saying of life is not a dress rehearsal. You only get one shot at this. And my God, don't let fear, don't let someone else's opinion hold you back, because I know this for a fact. I know there are people listening to this who are sitting on the fence and they want to take action and they maybe want to make that step to changing career or pursuing a journey that they know means a lot to them in their heart and soul, but they can't bring themselves to do it. On the subject of soulfulness, are you connected spiritually? Are you connected? What guides you?
Okay, this is fun. Right, I like this conversation. I always say yes to a degree. I'm spiritual. Now, a lot of the time, as soon as you say that to people, they think that you sit in pink yoga pants, burning sage, scream like omming. Like I get that. I've been around that. That's not the way I am. I think you've got to balance things out. I think yes, there's a problem if you're the overworked entrepreneur hustling away, and you might be rich, but you're very ill-connected and poor in a multitude of different areas. And then you're the other one where you've gone all in on self-awareness and self-actualization, but then your business is failing and everything else. So I think you've got to find that balance with this sort of stuff. I view spirituality as a sense of getting connected and grounded to yourself. I also view it as you taking control of your own life and not believing in something outside of yourself does that make sense? To
Yeah.
guide course. So for me, that's how I view it as. I wouldn't necessarily say I go down the whole route of, do you know what I mean? Like I meditate for all this sort of stuff. I do what I need to do to bring myself home, to get clear, to be aware, and to make the next actions.
Would you
I'd
have
say it's more like conscious awareness.
conscious awareness? Yeah, nice. Would you have a practice in terms of maybe some people would become consciously aware by tapping into meditation or through journaling or through speaking with others? Like how would you sort of dive deep into that inner self, that inner voice, that inner peace as such?
Ooh, right. So meditation for a lot of people is way out there and it's not going to happen. For me, the biggest part of my day is I sit first thing in the morning for 20 minutes with a coffee and do nothing. Nothing. I don't do anything. I sit with a pen, put it in front of a notepad, and I think, just go through my thoughts. That for me is enough of a practice to get clear, to make sense, to observe what's going on in my head, to work out what's right, what's not right, to think about how I feel. That's enough. Other things, like I always say, like at the minute I'm over in Bali, so I always say the surfboard has now become the meditation mat. So just being in places where I've got no distractions, being in nature is another great way. Have I done meditation practices? Yes. Have I done breathing workshops? Yes. But there's plenty of different tools to get clear. And I always say this to people is just find your tool. For me, the tool, regardless of where I am in the morning, is to take one of these and to stop. And that is it. It
Nice.
really
And
is it.
I I think there's a lot of power in just slowing down as well. In a fast-paced society, we wake up, we're on our phones, we're on social media, and I love that. It's a disconnection from the fast-paced, reality of life. I think that's powerful. It's something I would try actually, 100%. I would be a fan
Think of
of
it like you got to think like we spend so much time within our life. We never take the 30,000 foot square view and look over our life. So we're always living in it.
boom,
Yeah,
mic drop.
that's the power of stillness. And if you look at stoicism, if you look at spirituality, and you look at all sort of, you're taking yourself out of the trench to view the playing field. How did it move today? What's the next environment? How can we move? What are the opportunities that have arrived? Who am I not quite getting the right vibe from these days? So like that's what it allows you to do. Just stopping allows you to become the observer in your life and not the warrior all the time. It really is that.
That's good. One of my favorite sayings is like when you stand up front of a tree, all you can see is the tree. When you step back, you see the entire forest. And I think that's a similar sort of metaphor there. But it's powerful. It really is powerful. This is a deep question. But essentially, it's deep. But essentially, my two words, my philosophy is health and happiness, right? Um, are you happy, and what do you believe true happiness is? Have you achieved it? Are you on a journey to achieving it? What is the pursuit of happiness to you?
Oh, this is a beautiful question. I actually think it took me, so I've actually got a pivotal moment in my life here, and I've never ever voiced this. So thank you for giving me the platform to speak about this. Um, Happiness. I used to get asked a lot, are you happy? Are you happy? I always used to say yes, but it never felt right doing fitness stuff, being in certain industries, like XYZ relationships. And then I had this one like moment when I was 26 where I'd started doing a lot of this work, like going inwards. I might have been 27 actually. And one of my first ever clients, first, so think from 17 to 26, like 10 years. So she'd seen us all on social media and all that sort of stuff. And she hit me with that question and it knocked me for six. She was like, yeah, are you happy? And I was like, crap, I've not been asked that for quite some time now. And it was the first time I'd answered it and I'd felt authentic in answering it. And the biggest thing for that is how did I get there? I connected back to myself. I brought myself home. I changed my life. I went from being myself, not doing everything for everyone else. Do you know what I mean? And that was the real turning point for me. I was like, holy hell, I'm here. And I didn't realize it. And that was a real big pivotal moment for me was when Julie asked me if I was happy. It really was because all I can remember through my entire late teens, early 20s was being asked that on the odd occasion. And I answered it and I knew I was lying.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, no, 100%. I think obviously happiness is something we all want. One of my final questions, which I'll dive deep into in a wee while. I think certainly for me, and I think you'd probably agree with this, perhaps, is I think having a sense of purpose, which I know is one of your core, your core values as such, is important. Having that sense of purpose gives you the meaning and perhaps the fulfillment in your life. What is your purpose, Simon?
It's just to help people live, period. That's in a nutshell. But the biggest thing I can say from doing what I do and helping people within life and business is a lot of people really struggle to find the purpose, like really struggle. It's a big question for a lot of people. For me, I didn't know my purpose. I didn't, but I had to go out there and say yes to a lot of things. I had to try a lot of new things in order to find the things that lit me up and got me excited again. And then lo and behold, purpose started to lie in the trails of where those bits of gold landed. But the real purpose came when I stopped living outwards and took a look inwards.
Nice. So
And
your
that's
advice
for
to
me where I came, it all really kind of like connected the dots.
so your advice to listeners would be to look inwards and to just experiment and find yourself.
Yeah, no, yeah. in a nutshell, a lot of the time we don't try new things. We go out to the same places with the same people. We do the same things. We're in the same environments, hearing the same conversations from the same friend that tells the same story every time they've had a beer. That's what a lot of us do, and we grow every day. We grow in. We have a death and a rebirth. We can choose to be a different person a new day, and like a lot of the time, purpose gets lost. It gets lost. The routine has become a rut, and there's no excitement and enjoyment. And you've got to go out there and try new things and see what the new version of you enjoys. So for me, it was always connecting people, speaking, communicating. Do you know what I mean? Building communities and creating things. And do you know what I mean? I've gone all in on those over the past 3-4 years, and look at where it's led. You know?
Yeah, amazing, amazing. In Bali, living up the life, surfing, drinking coffee, having an unreal time. That's the goal. That's the dream. Cool. 3 questions. Nice, quick fire for you would be, and one of these questions I asked you the last time you were on my podcast before, so I'm interested to see if it's the same answer. Yeah.
Circumstances are a lot different.
Number one, best country you've traveled to and why?
Oh, I'm the worst person in these questions. It depends on the reason. What's the reason I'm in the country? The best country okay, so it would be between Mexico, Thailand, and Bali. Those would be the three. But if we're on about cities, it would be different answers. So
Hey,
I'm the worst person for those questions.
that's a fair answer. The
If you tell me why I'm there, I'll give you the direct answer. If it's to party, Mexico. If
I'm getting off
it's
that plane.
Manchester, England.
Nice. Okay, cool. Best. So this is the question I asked you last time. Best book you've read that maybe has had the biggest impact in your life?
This is definitely the same. It's always been the same. Conversations with God. It's not a spirit. It's not a religious structure. It's a book written about taking ownership of your own life and how the modern constructs of life has told us that everything is attached to something. And the thing that I really love that book is it really drives home like you are God. It's you. You have choice over what you do. You have choice over the way you live. You have choice over your decisions, actions, reactions. And that's the real thing that I love about that book. And that was the first book I read where I was a very closed-minded individual. And I read it and it really cracked me open. I was like, oh, there's more to this.
No, I remember that was the answer I was expecting. I read it after our podcast, and to say it had an impact on my life would be an understatement. It's interesting. Who's perhaps had, maybe from a mentor, maybe just in your life, who's had the biggest impact in maybe leading you in terms of direction or in terms of knowledge or in terms of maybe just self-belief or identity? Who's had that biggest role?
Oh my God. Emotional question. I've had a lot of mentors and a lot of big name mentors, but really the person who's always been there for me is my dad. Like that's it in a nutshell. Like, you know what I mean? Like sometimes a mentor can do so much, but the real person who you go home to and you can be honest and you can be yourself, the one who's really picked me out, like when I was at the penthouse to rock bottom moment, he was the one that bailed me out and directed me away from that. So I'm getting emotional even talking about that. But yeah, my dad.
Mate,
Really?
it's beautiful answer. Wow, yeah. I did warn you it was going to be deep. I did warn you. Amazing. Simon, tell us a little bit about the Nourish Group and what you're doing there, what it means, what it's about, and yeah, tell me a little bit about the Nourish Group.
The Nourish Group is a platform of businesses. It's like I was saying before, my biggest values are to connect people, to help people, to inspire people, and to give people the tools to grow. So the Nourish Group really is a platform that allows people to do that both on a personal sense. If people want to go and create their own businesses, it allows a platform for that. We have summits and retreats and events all over the world, which are going live. So for me, that really is the Nourish Group. And a big thing for us is to give back. So the Nourish Group also is a foundation to build schools in Africa for people who don't have the resources to do that and unfortunately have to live to society's way. The biggest thing for me was going there. We ran up Kilimanjaro, but the actual thing that I took away from that was seeing so much passion, drive and hunger and zest for life, but they genuinely didn't have the tools or resources to be able to harness it or to develop it. So that's a quite a big thing for us as well, is to give back.
That's amazing. I think like I've never been to Africa, right? But like I'd imagine that level of perspective, I think we all take it for granted just how blessed and fortunate we all are. And even during this pandemic right now, like like in the UK, like we have the NHS, like we are so fortunate. And I think, I can relate this to back to my health. I gained perspective when, I got ill, and it's everyone needs that perspective, I think, to change this sort of mindset.
Definitely. I think the biggest turning point for me was one of the local towns over there. There was a child that desperately wanted to go. This is another real good story about how if you want something so much, you can make it happen. Like this kid had nothing. He was like from a family that I don't even think had a house. Somehow managed to get a book, one of the school books. I don't know if he'd stole it or whatever it is, but he'd used to walk. So think of this: there's a neighborhood, and I think there was like one or two street lamps that had been erected in Tanzania. And he used to walk 3 miles or so to get under the light once he'd finished his farming duties. So he used to sit there on his own, this young six-year old or whatever it was, because they couldn't afford to go to school, and he'd read. So I don't know where he got this book from, but we used to see him just walk down, and he'd go and sit under this lamp and read for 4 hours. And for me, like
Unreal.
I opened this conversation by saying we have choice. That's something that we are blessed that we have. I think we have a lot more options available to us, but I think in those sorts of countries, yes, they have choice, but I also think their choices are very limited as to what they can do. And you know what I mean? When people have got that much passion and hunger, and at such a young age to want to grow and develop, to walk 3 miles to the nearest street lamp and like to read a book, well, it just puts the world into perspective, doesn't it?
Guys, when you're complaining next about the most mediocre sort of thing, get that perspective. And like even like relating back to my health when I was ill, I thought I was the luckiest person in the world because I'd seen the other patients in the cancer ward, and I was like, fuck, I'm lucky in comparison to how bad some people have had it. So find perspective in any area, and let that actually bring it back to yourself, and find your fortune, find the blessings, and count those blessings in your life, because we are all fortunate, and that's not something we practice enough of. Simon, before I ask my last question, where can the listeners find more about you online?
Just Simon Hall. Put it in Google, it'll come up on all media channels or the podcast or anything online. That it'll be there. Simon Hall BC.
What would be the one thing that could have the biggest impact on both our health and happiness? You can separate this into two answers, or it may be interlinked into one. What is the one thing that could create the biggest impact on our listeners' health and happiness?
The thing that came back to me then was know why you are doing what you are doing. Why do you do what you do? In every action you take, are you doing it for yourself, or are you doing it to please other people? And I really think when you start to bring those answers back home, that's where happiness is. You do more of the things that make you happy. You do more of the things that make you healthy. And I think that the two go hand in hand. I think health and happiness both run side by side. Because like, even if you look at it on a scientific level, my first industry was in the health industry. Like negative emotions do show us illnesses and disease. That's proven. Like, so especially like skin, stress comes through skin. So it's all there. Like the two go hand in hand with each other.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, I'm not even going to go on a tangent, but like even on a dietary level and how that influences the gut microbiome and that affects the brain and the serotonin, it's profound to say the least. I think that's an amazing answer, and I agree. They're they're synonymous to themselves. Um, Guys, Simon is an absolute gentleman, and it would mean the world to me if after this podcast you check out his work. Simon breeds authenticity and a genuinity about him in terms of the language that he speaks, in terms of the content that he puts out, and the work that he does. The Nourish Life podcast show,
That's the one.
that is unbelievable, and the guests that he has on there, like I've listened to a few episodes and they've blown my mind, and I can guarantee they'll blow yours as well. But look, Simon, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast, and for taking out time in your day, in the jungle to be on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. And anything you'd like to say to the listeners before we wrap up?
Yes, I do. I do. Ask yourself at the end of the day, what is on your should have list? I should have done this. I should have had this conversation. I should have took this action. And start making your should have list your to-do list.
Nice.
Say to anyone,
Nice.
your
Should
should
have
have
left.
list is your fearful list.
Sick. Absolutely amazing. Simon, it's been a pleasure. Guys, until next time, stay healthy, be happy. Take care.